Hey friend, Chris Vandeviver here from WhyLogicProRules.com, the website that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Today I want to share with you 3 plugins that you can use in Logic right now if you're trying to achieve that auto panning effect. Perhaps you have a pad sound that you want to drift in and out of the stereo spectrum. Maybe you have some ear candy that you want to travel from left to right. Or it could be any track that you want to draw the listener's attention to that has a little bit of mystique that keeps things fresh as the listener is listening to your song. It's really easy to assume that Logic doesn't have the facility for auto panning just because there's not one plugin that's called Auto Panner. But that's simply not true. There are several plugins you can use, some really simple filter and modulation plugins you can use for just a quick and easy auto panning effect, to other plugins where you can pinpoint specific about everywhere your sound travels between the left and right. And we'll dig into all 3 of those options today. First, I have a riff here that I've been working on. I'm pretty pumped about, pretty low key. Let's take a quick listen, and then we'll start to explore these different options of auto panning. Okay, pretty low key. I'm pretty pumped on this riff. It's very moody. But one thing I'm starting to think is that those electric keys that are kind of rhythmically bouncing around, if I ever want a vocalist to record on top of this riff, it's going to be really hard for them to compete with those electric keys. So I need to get them out of the way and make space for the vocalist. And just to acquaint ourselves with what exactly the electric keys sound like, I'll mute those. We'll introduce our drums and we'll introduce some of the bass sounds. And let's take another quick listen again. Awesome. So it's those rhythmic sort of punctuating with a reverb that trails from the center to the left and right. Again, I'm really pumped on this sound, but it's just a little too much. So the first plugin we're going to dive into is in the modulation section of the plugin folder, and that's the Tremolo plugin. It's really easy to overlook the modulation plugins because they're pretty simple. They don't have a lot of controls. They don't emulate any sort of particular analog device. And Tremolo, you might think guitar players, you might think that kind of wobbling effect of a signal just coming in and out of the picture. But if you open a stereo instance of your Tremolo plugin, the signal will pan from left to right. So let's take a listen to this Tremolo out of the box with its rate synced to the project tempo of a quarter note rate and just with everything as is. Take a listen to the electric keys now. And it's bouncing from left to right. That's pretty awesome. And if we reduce the smoothing down to 0%, we're going to really exaggerate this effect. Take a listen again. And let's bump this up so it cycles every 1 bar. And then we'll really hear this hard pan of left to right each and every bar. Super simple. We got that hard panning effect from left to right in less than a minute. And we can further fine tune with the various controls. We get an offset, the panning effect. So it's a little off of the grid. We can play with the phase so the left and right signals aren't exactly the same. Gets kind of choppy. And we can even play with the symmetry so we can reduce the length of the panning effect on one side. Very cool. And then, of course, we could play with the smoothing and make it a little less obvious that it's hard left, hard right. Instead, it's traveling between the left and right in a very, just a very soft manner. Let me set everything back. Amazing. It's so simple. And let's say you don't have a stereo track, but you have a mono track that you want to pan from left to right. Well, that's really simple. Just hold Option and click on that mono track. And now you can open up any plugin in the opposite format. So in this case, we have a stereo track. Holding Option and clicking the audio effects section allows me to open a Tremolo as a mono instance instead. So we can hear that classic kind of in and out thing. Let me just set the smoothing so there is no smoothing. And in the opposite direction, click one of the open audio effects while holding Option, and then we can open a stereo instance on a mono track. So let me get rid of some of this stuff. And next up, we're going to open up a filter plugin, and that's the auto filter. Auto filter can feel a little over the top for some users if you're not familiar with all this stuff, but we're just going to ignore all of this stuff. We're just going to set the cutoff to 100%. We're not going to cut off anything. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the LFO to 100%, and then I'm going to set the stereo phase negative 180 degrees. And we're going to leave the waveform just kind of going back and forth left to right. And what we'll hear is more of like a swooping effect from left to right. Check it out. Which that's pretty cool. And again, we could set this on a 1-bar basis or a quarter note or eighth note. Let's try an eighth note. And just by playing with the stereo phase, you can get some pretty interesting experiences of the track traveling around from left to right. But when you're looking to get a little more control over the auto panning, you can't do any better than the step effects that comes in the multi-effects section of the Logic plugin folder. Now, step effects can be really overwhelming because there's tons of modules that you can rearrange and you can modulate and you can hook things together, and it can be a lot. But 9 times out of 10, I turn to the step effects right down here for this panning step modulator. And in fact, let's just set the cutoff for the filter to 20K. We'll turn it off. We'll even turn off the step modulator for the filter cutoff, and we'll turn on the pan step modulator. And I'm going to make sure to reduce the output too. It's a little loud. But just watch this. Right out of the gate, it's like the team at Apple knew that we would want an auto panning and a very smooth transition from left to right. Take a look and listen as we play this track. We're going to watch these steps go from left to right in a very gradual way. And this is based on a 16th note rate. The depth is at 100, and we can even add swing if we want. Let's just introduce a bunch of swing and we'll set the rate to like 30-second notes. And again, we can have this pan anywhere in between. So the beauty of the step effects is that you can program each individual step exactly how you want it. Maybe you don't want 16 steps. Maybe you want way more than 16 steps. Let's just break this down to like 8 steps for now. And I'm just going to play with the panning just by clicking and dragging each step. And we'll just do a really hard pan left and right thing. And I'll set this to maybe quarter note. And we'll adjust this as well. We can tie notes together so that it feels like a smooth transition, or we can untie the notes so it feels a little more staggered. And you can even adjust how long each step is by clicking the edge of each step and adjusting. So we can do like 25% or 50, 75. You can even tie notes together just by dragging across. Now these are tied together. Let's take a listen. It's really amazing. And once you start stepping into the different modes for LFO, for factory, you can work with a sine wave as we saw. We can do some pretty crazy stuff. Let's take a look at random square and take a look at this. Obviously, we have this random setting from left to right, but if we scroll, we have up to 128 individual steps for this panning step modulator. And you can do the same thing for the filter cutoff, the gate mix. It's crazy. It will cycle through 128 different steps based on what we've set for the parameters. And if you click on the gear right here, we can adjust what steps we have laid out in the step effects and have them move or adjust in certain directions. So maybe we want all of the steps to move over one space to the left or to the right. Let's do that right now. And we can continue to do that. Shift left. We're moving all the steps over. Or we can invert the steps so instead of the notes going to the left and then to the right, they can work in the opposite direction. And then also, we can double note length. We can have random deviation. It's crazy. You can reverse the entire 128 steps. And then we can even have the depth work in opposite directions. So if we set this, let's say to a sine wave, it starts to the left, goes to the right, back to the left, to the right. We can instead have it start to the right and then to the left. But right here, this one section of step effects, if you don't touch anything else, you can get the whole auto pan thing going for your mix, have it specified exactly how you want it so it fits exactly with your vision. It's really amazing, and you don't have to go elsewhere. You don't have to buy third-party plugins or, download anything else. It's all right here for you. In this particular mix, I'm preferring the auto filter sort of sweeping effect. So let's check it out. So I hope that was helpful for you. If it was, as always, I highly recommend subscribing to the YouTube channel, Why Logic Pro Rules, or subscribing on the website itself, whylogicprorules.com. Every week I'm posting new videos, new emails, and posts to help you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Thanks so much.